Oi, Carlos. Você tá no mudo.
Sim, é que eu tava com o som ligado. Tudo
Tudo,
bem?
tudo bem.
Muito prazer.
Prazer.
É, prazer, cara. Muito obrigado.
Eu estava lendo um pouco aqui, Carlos, o teu paper,
Sim.
e daí acho que a gente tem até motivos para outras conversas, viu?
Ah, legal. Que bom.
Você trabalha um pouco com PR e com os e-commerce, né?
Na verdade, a história longa, curta, é que eu tô aqui na Dinamarca há 7 anos e eu não sei, você trabalha com a Vetex. Eu fiz toda a expansão internacional da Vetex, então a minha especialidade é a expansão internacional, só que através de conteúdo, né? Então, é uma agência de PR. Eu gosto de falar que é uma agência mais moderna de PR, porque eu acredito que o conteúdo é a desculpa para a gente ter uma conversa boa. Por exemplo, hoje, pode ser que alguma parceria estratégica se desenhe no futuro, sei lá. Né? Então, eu acredito muito nisso. O conteúdo sempre ele dá boas desculpas.
PR. Tudo bem, Hugo?
O Hugo tá aí?
Sim.
Tô aqui com som agora.
E aí, Hugo?
Fala, Estevam, tudo bem? Como
Bem,
foi lá
Hugo?
na reserva lá?
Foi tudo jóia. Foi bom. Tá com a Liana lá, né? Gente boa.
É, gente boa.
Tá bem, Hugo?
Tudo ótimo, tudo ótimo. Que ótimo estarmos juntos novamente, certo?
Super legal.
Aliás,
Gostei desse fundo aí.
aliás, Hugo, não sei se você tem dado uma fugidinha já de casa,
Ah,
mas eu queria te convidar para um café esses dias.
eu vou.
Vai.
Eu não estava indo. Eu não estava indo. O primeiro que eu fui, primeiro que eu tive coragem de ir e sair foi com esse cara aqui em cima,
É
ele e
que
o pai dele quando ele veio para o Brasil.
na Dinamarca a gente é Covid free.
É.
Aí o Hugo teve
E
coragem.
aí eu tive coragem de ir lá no bar do meu filho, que é bem aberto, bem arejado, tudo mais, lá no Mutirô. Mas eu vou com prazer, Estevam.
Fica aberto
Aliás, cada
também.
dia, agora vamos mudar de idioma.
Ah, o Enzo aí. Ei, Enzo.
We're not hearing you yet.
Just about.
And how about now?
Yeah, very
Now
nice.
it's great.
Perfect.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all of you. Maybe we can wait we should wait maybe 4 minutes, 3 minutes, and then we can get started. But yeah, how's the weather in Amsterdam, Enzo? I suppose you're there?
That cannot even be a question to somebody in Holland. It always sucks.
I mean, you're not in Denmark. I'm based in Denmark, right? So I think it's more here.
I would say it's almost the same,
Yeah.
but the Scandinavians are really good in making children movies where it's always sunny, and then pretend as if it's always sunny in Denmark or in Sweden. So I think the marketing of those countries is simply better done than the Dutch.
Oh, you're very blunt, right? The Dutch.
Yeah, that's the Dutch.
I know. It's good.
Hi, Enzo. Nice to meet you. I'm Hugo from Conscious Capital in Brazil. And to make you less jealous, those days in São Paulo are awful.
Thank you very much for your attempt. But I would still give any bad day in Brazil for a good day in Holland, honestly.
Could be.
Hi, Enzo. It's a pleasure to be with you too. Here is Esteban from Dengo.
Hi.
Just so you know, the folks are a little slow in Brazil because it's a holiday today. It's Remembrance Day, so so people might take a little while to come in. But yeah, what would be Remembrance? Do we have Remembrance Day in the Netherlands? It's like
What do you remember?
No,
The dead.
All of them. So it's Dia de los Muertos, more or less.
Yeah, that's it.
No, we don't have that.
No.
We should have, but we're barbarians, so no.
Perfect. Yeah, I think we should get started. So I'll make a few opening remarks here. I'd like to thank you all very much for this opportunity. It's a big effort for Steven and Hugo, because I know it's a holiday in Brazil. So thanks for this. Also for you, Enzo, thanks for making time.
Just happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2020, I kind of set out I thought I was looking for more meaningful content. I've always been involved into business development, marketing, and stuff like that. And I somewhat became frustrated a little bit to how it happens. I think the conversations in general, they tend to be very shallow. So that's one of the reasons that I started seeking out for more content as such. I've always produced content, but meaningful content. And I have, I've watched the documentary on Netflix, Rotten, and that's the first time I heard about Tony Chocolonely, and I was impressed. I think it's appalling, maybe that's the word, and I think it's sad to see. I was blind. I didn't know that such things happen in the chocolate industry, and I saw your TED Talk today where you talk about happiness, but how can we be happy if there is slavery in what we are consuming, right? So that inspired me to look for conscious talks and conscious businesses. I came across Hugo about 6 months ago, and since then we started collaborating. He's the chairman over at the Conscious Capitalism Institute in Brazil. I did a live also with Raj Sisodia. Steven here, he's ahead of Dengo. I mean, they're doing a brilliant work as well in Brazil. Got to know one of his stores at the Higienópolis Mall, and it's fantastic what they're doing. So yeah, over the next 60 minutes, we're here to learn a little bit more about the chocolate industry, the main challenges that it faces, and how companies like yours and Dengo in Brazil, have begun this beautiful movement, and what can be done actually to change the industry, and to get more people engaged. So that's really what this is about. I always start my content and talks with the same good question, the big picture. So perhaps we should do a quick round of introductions. Maybe we start with Enzo, yeah? Because we are all Brazilians.
Just introducing myself?
Yeah. Brief introduction. How you actually landed in Tony Chocolonely? What's the story? How did you start? What's a little bit of the journey there?
Okay, but how long do I have, Carlos? Because I can go for hours about this.
Right, 3 minutes.
If you get me going, then I won't stop. So how long do I have? Short.
3 minutes.
What?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay.
3 minutes introduction.
So my name is Enzo, and I'm the Choco evangelist of Tony Chocolonely. And sometimes I call myself the chief evangelist, because then if I call myself the chief evangelist officer, I get into all those cool CEO parties. So I'm the Choco evangelist, and I spread the story of chocolate, of Tony's, and mostly of the importance for us, why we need to change the cocoa industry from within. And Tony's was founded when, a bit more than 15 years ago, a couple of Dutch journalists saw an article in a newspaper about child slaves being traded in Mali for the cocoa industry, and they were shocked. They were shocked why this wasn't common knowledge, why this was a page 12 little article instead of front page news, because they had no idea. And neither did anybody around them about chocolate. And still today, very few people know about the bitter reality behind the sweet story of chocolate. And that is simply the fact that up till today in Ghana and Ivory Coast, where 60% of all the cocoa in the world comes from, more than 1.5 million children are doing illegal labor, and 95% of them do that labor in hazardous surroundings. So they work with machetes or with chemicals or with heavy machinery. And at least 30,000 children are subject to something that can be considered modern slavery. which is ridiculous for a product that everybody should be able to enjoy, right? Chocolate, if you eat it, it's delicious, it's lovely. If you give it away, it's a lovely present, but it's not a treat for everybody in the whole value chain. And we think there needs to be more awareness from the consumers, from retailers. So that's really the bottom-up approach. We think there needs to be more pressure on organizations through legislation, where they need to simply prove that they have no human rights violations in their value chain. And we do that by creating awareness amongst consumers, by showing the chocolate industry that chocolate can be made in a different way. So however long they keep saying this can only be done by a tiny company in Holland, well, we're market leaders in Holland now. We're available in Scandinavia and all across the globe, but still they say it's not scalable. We think it is scalable, and we show them. And then the last step in our strategy is that we want to inspire other organizations to simply take their responsibility when it comes to eradicating child labor from the value chains of cocoa, and in a broader perspective, honestly, because there needs to be no forced child labor in any product that you purchase. So that is what we do as a company. We've been doing that for 15 years. And we're starting to move up the pressure on governments, move up the pressure on organizations, because consumers are really showing that they want this, right? And they want farmers to earn a living income. They want the companies to take their responsibility for complete value chain instead of hiding behind the fact that it's the word market, this is how the system works. Well, if this is how the system works, we need to change the system instead of saying this is simply how it works. So that is what we do as a, I would say, formerly small Dutch chocolate company.
Fantastic. Steven, maybe you'd like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you. We could say, Enzo, that we are in the same challenges. The different part maybe is that the facing challenges we have in Brazil, they aren't so deep or so difficult that we face in Africa. In Brazil, we have in the region that we perform here in South Bahia, that in the northeast coast of the country, we have around 60, 90,000 cocoa farmers. 23, 25 of them have never been in school. And although we don't have children labor, we have some subtle or some nuances of working or bad living conditions here. Certainly compared to Africa, we are in a better condition, but even though they are drastically, they live with a wage that is not enough to a good living condition. And as Enzo and Voice and other agencies in the chain know very well, when we struggle to living condition is the minimum, is not what we desired for the chain. And we know that we have a huge change in the coming years to be processed, but we fortunately believe that business such as Tony, such as Dango, and many other businesses that enrolls, we were born 2 years ago not as a new brand. We were born as a new business model focused in social impacts in Bahia. We believe that the world requires our more business, conscious business, because we know the importance of business in addressing solutions to the cocoa chain or other chains we know. If many new businesses involve, engage in such discussions, we will believe that business, not brands, are the main issue, and conscious business may conduce such change.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steven. Hugo, maybe a few words about yourself. Also, I think about the Conscious Capitalism Institute. So many initiatives here. Yeah.
So thank you once again, Carlos. Thank you for having this great opportunity to put me together with Esteban, that is a good friend and a good Brazilian entrepreneur, also associated to the Brazilian Conscious Capitalism Institute. And Enzo, a great pleasure to know you and what Tony Chocolonely is doing around the world to change the way. So what you are trying to do, Tony, is very close to what is the purpose of conscious capitalism in Brazil. That is help transforming the way of doing investments and business in Brazil to reduce inequality. So this is our purpose. So it's very similar to what you and Enzo and Esteban are trying to do in their business. My entire career, professional career, was made on the food retail business. I worked for two French big chains, Carrefour and Casino, almost during my entire professional 35 years life. And when I was in GPA, that is Grupo Pão de Açúcar Casino, we met Raj Sisodia, one of the co-founders of the Conscious Capitalism, and how the other co-founder, John Mackey, CEO of Whole Foods, is as well a retailer. We become very, very, very close. So when I left GPA 8 years ago, with another group of Brazilians, we went to a C, like how you mentioned. It's nice to have a C level because we can go in very important places. So we went to the CEO Summit meeting of Conscious Capitalism in Austin in 2013, and we applied, or we asked it, to start the business or the organization in Brazil. At that time, only Australia have a chapter outside the US, and we became the second international chapter. So October 15 last, we completed our first septennium of our first 7 years of existing. And what I want to bring is reading a very new book that I recommend to everyone that just came out from Rebecca Henderson, saying the book is Reimagining Capitalism in the World on Fire. So it starts with an interesting provocation. What is capitalism? One of humanity's greatest invention and the greatest source of prosperity the world has ever seen, or a menace on the verge of destroying the planet and destabilizing society? And a third one, or some combination that need to be reimagined. For conscious capitalism, is some combination that need to be reimagined. We cannot guilt everything that capitalism in the last 200 years brought in terms of wealth, in terms of health, in terms of technology, in terms of life quality, in terms of inequality, in terms of lifting people out of poverty. But in the last 40, 50 years, in the other hand, is absolutely destroying people's wealth or health and destroying the planet. So this is the chance that we have to bring businesses to say what exactly Esteban said about Dengo's business. Is not a new chocolate brand. It's not a new chocolate store. It's a new way of doing business in a conscious way. And this is the important thing, because when we get the last book of Raj Sisodia, launched in Brazil in May, and in English it's available since September last year, is the Healing Organizations. And what we say here in Conscious Capitalism is that, what is your business purpose? As Esteban said, when he started 3 years ago, many chocolate companies, very successful, in Brazil are already in place. But he understood that he need to have a purpose, and a purpose respond the simple question: what's the humanity pain that my business will heal? And this brings a business to have value. So this is how I see in a simple way, what is our mission, what is our purpose, and how we can provocate and elevate humanity through business.
Very nice. Thank you, Hugo. It's fantastic. Gents, I'd like to dive into the chocolate subject now. So perhaps if you like to explain how the industry works, because I learned that from I visited the store actually a few times, the Tony flagship store in Amsterdam. And so, and I learned a lot from the documentary, but perhaps if you can explain a little bit how the industry works, at least in Africa, then we have an overview in Brazil as well. It's interesting to compare because Esteban said that the challenges are not the same, but somewhat could be similar, but maybe a little more complex in Africa. But if you'd like to explain, Enzo, would be fantastic.
Okay, let me see whether I can actually pop up a couple of slides here to show you more or less how that looks. Hold on here, maybe this. So let me just in general sketch. Sorry to steal your thunder, maybe Esteban, but let me just in general sketch how the world of cocoa looks, because cocoa grows around the equator. Mm-hmm. There's a bit of cocoa that comes from Asia. There's a bit of cocoa that comes from South America, where originally cocoa comes from. But the majority of all cocoa nowadays is grown in Western Africa. And those are millions of tiny farms, not big plantations. These are 2, 3, 4 hectare size family-run businesses, millions of them. The other side of the value chain is billions of consumers who just want to be able to eat a full bar of chocolate every single day in their life and not feel bad about it. And in the middle of the value chain, and that is where the challenge comes out of, there's only a handful of companies that actually produce chocolate from cocoa. So those are the big industrials like Olam, Cargill, Callebaut, and the bigger known brand names like Nestle, Hershey's, Mars, Mondelez. But my wild guess would be that not much more than 10 or 12 companies produce about 90% of all chocolate in the whole wide world. And it's in their interest that the price of cocoa remains low. In our opinion, that price is inhumanly low, because for a bar that's sold in Holland for €2.80 per bar, not much more than 15 or 16 cents. So in international terms, 5.5–6% of the retail price actually ends up in the hands of the farmer that grows that cocoa. And that leads to the average cocoa farmer in Ivory Coast and his or her family members living off 72 euro cents or about 79 dollar cents of available income per person per day. Now, mind you, the living income level for Ivory Coast is stated at €2.20 per person per day. And the extreme poverty level is stated at €1.79 per person per day. So this is about a third of the extreme poverty level, which we think means that that value chain is very unequally divided simply. Now, a couple of statistics to make me sound smart. There's 2 countries in Africa, in Western Africa, that produce about 60% of all cocoa in the whole wide world. Those are Ghana and Ivory Coast. In Ghana and Ivory Coast, there's about 2.5 million farms that grow cocoa. On those farms, the latest reports or figures from the NORC report say that more than 1.5 million children work on those farms, of which 95% do hazardous work. And as I just said earlier on, at least 30,000 are subject to something that can be considered modern slavery. I don't really like the term, but in a sense, it means that they're doing unpaid and illegal and forced work, often outside the family environment. Now, let me leave it at this to sketch how the world of cocoa looks, at least from a Western African perspective. But I think in itself, we should not agree with any product on any shelf that has any form of modern slavery in it. So that's an approach that I would say is top down, to simply make it illegal to put those things on shelf, and bottom up by just having the awareness as consumers that we can make a difference each and every single day by doing different purchase decisions, right? By realizing that you don't only vote every 4 or 6 years, but you vote every single moment you buy something. You're on mute, Carlos. I'm using the most used sentence of the last 6 months. You're still on mute.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, Steven, would you add anything to this? Or is this something new to you? I believe not. But
as an overview of the chain, Enzo was really happy in expressing in a 2-minute summary. Good, Enzo. And Rotten, as another good documentary you mentioned, Carlos, is for people that are listening us or viewing us and would like to know in a deeper perspective, is something we could recommend you assist in a doc in Netflix. Rotten, The Dark Side of Chocolate, are another good doc that express these difficulties we face around the globe in the cocoa sector. I would like to add just one question or one issue, that is, how should we pay to cocoa? Honestly speaking, I believe that is a price issue that certainly is related to the question, yeah? Because sometimes in Brazil, you go to the shelves and you see the price of a chocolate that is even almost or the same price of a bottle of water or a soft drink. Then you could say, oh, something is really strange. There is something wrong. How could a business that has so many other ingredients be priced almost in the same price? Yeah, that I believe that Tony Dango and many other new businesses, they are really sensible about the importance of paying more for the cocoa farmers. I believe that treating so as a business requires we facing the difficulties in a business perspective. And in the business perspective, there is no way of changing this without as Enzo mentioned, we have so many inequalities in this chain, and we need to change the markup of the elements in the chain to address the solution. We believe that we have shared values in a new perspective that may be part of this change.
Completely agree. We really need a systemic change. This is not it's really systemic.
Mm-hmm. And the question I would have also is, Steven, in Brazil, and it might look like a stupid, dumb question, but are we that exposed as well to the big corporations, or the likes of what Cargill?
As a general shape, we have the same in a global perspective. Mm-hmm. The same players in local perspective are the same players in Brazil. Yeah, we have 3 or 4 huge companies that are in the grinding process that are the same that Enzo know in Europe or any one place you go in the globe. As I already exposed, Carlos, fortunately, we don't have so deep challenges that we have in Africa. Mm-hmm. But independently, they are even challenges. Mm-hmm. As we said, for example, in Brazil, we had a survey in the recent months that expressed that half of the cocoa farmers, they do not possess a restroom in their homes. Then you believe, oh, what happens? We have bad living conditions. The average age of them is around 62 years old. We have an elder chain And nobody will continue such chain without having business. Because if we want to retain human in the field, but without addressing a good condition, we are doing such a bad thing. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And thank you, Stefan. If we talk really about the root of the problem, because Stefan pointed out, and Enzo as well, it's somewhat related to the stocks market, how the price is regulated, correct? And then the big corporations, they pay, even though I was actually checking today something about that the price of the cocoa had risen, and yet the cocoa farmers, they didn't see that rise in their pockets, because you know,
exactly. This is exactly the argument that when
it's a rigged system, right?
It's a rigged system, but it's very complex too. By the way, the pricing of cocoa isn't that easy. But in general, you can say that if other chocolate producers tell me this is impossible for us to scale in the same way because we would outprice ourselves, it would become more expensive, then we point them to the fact that 2 or 3 years ago, the prices of cocoa plummeted, right? Almost halved the price of cocoa. The price of chocolate on the shelves remained completely the same. So about $8 billion was stuck somewhere in the system, and that definitely didn't go to the farmers that grow that cocoa. So then we tell them, if in those times you gather $8 billion, how can you complain that it becomes more expensive if the cocoa becomes slightly more expensive? And a good example is that in Holland, the biggest retailer started making their own their private label chocolate through the same sourcing principles that we use, and they maintained the same margins, and their bars became 8 to 10 cents more expensive. And consumers are fine with that. They're happy to pay a premium if something good is done with that. But at the same time, I would say stuff doesn't need to become more expensive to become more sustainable.
So what's
sometimes it does, by the way. Sometimes it does, because if some chocolate is on shelves that is ridiculously cheap, I would say it can only be that cheap by exploiting farmers and their family.
Not a question of final price, because we made, as Enzo expressed, we have to renew the system, all the chain. One of the challenges is how we pay more for the farmers without paying more as customers. And it is really possible. We needed to remake our business. Is new business model. It's not only a question of a new business line of products. We all agree, Carlos, that the final solution purpose the industry know in a binomial, a price premium and productivity. But what happens if you talk with the big companies, what they say for the farmers? Produce more if you want to earn more money. Produce more. You needed to enhance your productivity. But this became a negative circles, because how will the producer produce more if he does not have economic or feasible solution in hand? That's certainly, when we say in Dengo that we work in quality, we focus on quality because it's a easiest way of enhancing a premium for the cocoa. We engage the farm in the chain. It's a question of reputation, it's a question of image, and it's a question of free cash. Once we promote a premium price, as Tony does and Dengo do, we may promote a free cash that with this new cash, he may engage in enhancing productivity. But it's really difficult. He does not have money to buy more land. How he will may plant new trees? How he may address fertilizers and other insumes questions without having money? Then we all in the chain knew that it's a binomial, price and productivity. And there are some enabling conditions enrolled, such as credit. Certainly credit is ridiculous in the chain all around the globe. We don't have credit enough for producers. And the other is technical assistance. In Brazil, particularly speaking, we know the difficulties that the public system has to provide technical assistance in a good quality and capillarity.
Perfect. And then the question is how to fix it. What are the solutions that Tony and both Dengo are implementing? You know, from bean to bar, if you will, like to sort of to fix this solution. I don't know, to sort of foster more like entrepreneurial communities and stuff like that. You know, what are the solutions then?
Carlos, let me introduce a question here. I think one of the major problems is exactly why conscious capitalism exists, is that we cannot sit in a fire pit in the future in front of a group of kids and say, yes, the planet got destroyed, but for a beautiful moment in time, we created a lot of value for the shareholders.
Mm.
So the problem remains here. Value for the shareholders instead of value for the stakeholders on the way that we keep generating return and profit for the shareholder, but on this way we are generating wealth to each stakeholder on the chain. And when we see this discussion about the price of the bar, and when Enzo says a private label premium that don't want to don't want to hit the chain and want to put this in a better way, he rose the price in some cents, not euros, cents. And customers accepted. As a former retailer, I don't know if this word exists. Never will you be a former retailer. The question is that the perception or the misunderstanding is that the guilty of raising the price is the retailer chain. Nobody, the customer don't see what is on behind, don't see all the chain that needs it. So in all my speeches, I say, when you are happy with something that you are doing a bargain, your happiness cannot be over the suffer of someone. Never. So I think this is the major question. For example, in Brazil, you are following Esteban as well, Enzo maybe not. We are in a very flat general inflation, very low income rate, but some food items like rice, for example, rose at 50% in the last year, in this period. But it finally arrived to something around 30 reais, that is 5 euros, more or less. 30 reais, 5 kilos rice that can feed a family for a month. And everybody's claiming, but they go to McDonald's and they pay the same price for a burger. So where is the balance? Where is the value of the producer as well? When Esteban was mentioned, the new generations, the rice production in Brazil was going the same way. Rice was so inexpensive that producers say, I will not plant anymore. And this starts an speculation and an inflation that will not need. So I think not only we need to change all the system, saying that you can make profit. For sure, capitalism, we believe that remains being the better way of generating wealth and social inclusion of people, elevating their dignity. No way, no different way. But when you are doing this, you need to think that your return on investments need to be in long term. In the last word, remember that you are an investor, not a speculator.
Perfect. Enzo, do you have any views on that? Actually, because another question that I have then on top of what Hugo just said is, so in the documentary Rotten, it says that you partnered with Callebaut, Henry Callebaut, right? Where because they are one of the major producers of chocolate with the big muscles, right? And then the question I would have for you guys as well is, would it make sense also to partner with retailers in some sense, and looking at that, the whole chain, right?
Definitely. I think they are an essential part when it comes to key stakeholders. And let me play around with my nifty little tools here that you saw me playing around with earlier. This is what we believe, it's not about us making 100% slave-free chocolate. It's about working together with governments, with cocoa farmers. They have a responsibility. Working with retailers, they have a responsibility. Working with consumers, they have a responsibility. Because it's not about one brand creating one beautiful, shining thing. No, it's about all of us working together to create a better world. Right? 100% slave-free chocolate can only be reached if we all join hands and work together. And I'm really convinced of that. And I completely agree with what Hugo said. The problem in our economic system is that if you look at history, in the 50s or 60s, investments were made for an average of 20 years. And if you look at the investment nowadays, they're done for an average of 6 months, which is ridiculous. It's much more short-term focus instead of having a very long-term focus.
Cool. And in regards,
I believe, Carlos.
Yeah, sorry.
As Hugo mentioned, we needed to look the system in a new perspective. As the globe Enzo showed you in the back, we were created, or we were born in a globe that we say, I do business in terms of new competitors. And what we need to believe is that the challenges is so huge that we need to engage all the chain and even the competitors involved, because Dengo is so small. I promote a good relative impact, but the absolute impact that big chain promotes, if they convert or if they combine solutions that we do in our business with their business, we will really promote a huge difference in a global perspective. We do not see the old industry as a competitor. We need to face them as collaborators. If we do not face that we are all together in the change, we will not address so.
Perfect. And
I think going back, so just Carlos, going back to what we are saying, is conscious capitalism is based in 4 basic pillars. The first one is a higher purpose. So instead of driving your business to compete, because there's another thing very important. In the business life, you're not playing a finite game. You're playing an infinite game. So there's no winning line. You need to play forever. Instead of you have resources and guts, you need to play. So the question is that if the first pillar of conscious capitalism is having a higher purpose, is aligning this higher purpose to every stakeholder, and you will get what Enzo was saying. When you make your employee understand the purpose, So align his personal purpose to this. The problem is that the majority of the companies, we still remain hiring competence and firing for behavior instead of doing the inverse. Hiring behavior, trust, and forming people, training people to become competent. The other pillar, so if I would say, the other pillar is treat all the stakeholders in a balanced, equanimous way. That means no stakeholder, especially the shareholder, is more important than the other stakeholders. They're not equal, but the relationship is equanimous. You need to generate wealth during this process. Then creating a culture and values that will perpetuate the business. Anywhere, I think, including in the Netherlands, in Brazil, I'm for sure. I am also an accountant. So every business contract says the time frame for this business is endless. And we forget that. So all this is very nice. All this is very pretty to put on a wall. The problem is that it's only sustainable when we have a conscious leader that take care of the people, understanding that doesn't matter the business that we are discussing. The business of business are people forever. So treat well the people and you will get a great return in your business. The way so is changing. How Enzo said, is the responsibility of all the stakeholders ecosystem to be part of this changing. Because it's not one company that will do. If it do it alone, my perception is that customers, if they don't understand exactly what's going on, will blame that retailer company saying, you are raising the prices, you are making more money. So the challenge begins in the bottom, begins in the farmers, begins in the industry and the transporters, in the logistic, in the packaging, and the selling, and many other things. So the question is, how can we have, and why is the difference? Because I think there for you too, there, Esteban and Enzo, there's a provocation as well. In one hand, you have a bar that costs the same of a bottle of water. And in Brazil, this is very cheap. Then you have a Dango product that costs you probably a bottle of a good beer. But then you have Lindt that costs you a whiskey bottle. So, but they are not more conscious that you are. So I think including explaining to the customer how do they choose the right product is a big challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly speaking, Hugo, we have an educational degree in Brazil or Latin America that unfortunately is poorer than we have in Europe or in US. Consciousness, as we know and we love, if we want to have conscious business, it requires conscious consumers. And one of the challenges we have is how we inspire, how we awake the customers to such challenges because their choices is crucial to the change of all the chains, not only chocolate chain, but all the chains. Who defines is the customers. We are customers. Our choices makes the difference. And one of the challenges we have in Bengo in terms of communication is how we engage customers in such reflection, not addressing our business interests only. It involves our business too, but how we awake them. For example, we are an industry more of the sugar industry than the cocoa industry, unfortunately. We have so fat in the chocolate yet. We want a healthier chocolate for the world. We want a chocolate that does not child labor as Tony's does. We want the new reality we want. Who defines it is the customer. And it's not a simple answer. It's not a simple solution. It's a huge challenge we have. Is how we engage people in such consciousness, in such reflection process.
And we not even started discussing the palm oil yet.
Indeed.
Which you don't need to have in chocolate.
That's it. But you don't need to have it, but many ones still have it. So I think the question that Steven put is very interesting. For the major reason is that how do we, for example, I don't know, Enzo, probably it happened everywhere in the world, every country that was hit by the COVID, the governments helped some way the companies. So that's a second reason to understand the shareholders or their executives, the C levels, they need to return and they need to give explanations, not only for their shareholders anymore, but to the stakeholders, because all the society with their tax recovering saved those companies. The government was using your tax payment to save companies and to help poor people. In Brazil, more than 40 million people received an emergency aid. So this we need when Steven says we need to understand that if you receive it, is because someone paid that tax. And it's important when you do some bargain, avoid when it is a great advantage, ask it if it is a product stolen, piracy, or smuggled. Those products could make your happiness, but they don't pay taxes, and those taxes do not revert to society.
Yes, and to the education point, I watched this. It wasn't a TED Talk. You were in France, Enzo, and so because I think there's no more strong campaign when you're able to show faces, right? Because there you showed real African children who were actual slaves, and I was
in our exhibition.
Yeah, exactly. And I was like, forgive me, my French, but for fuck's sake, that is powerful in a way to show consumers, because you really have an impact there. Because when you actually see some faces, right? See, I was a slave who was producing chocolate for you guys. Then you start really having an impact, and that's something I want to show my children. They're 7 and 5 years old. Half Danes, half Brazilians, very fortunate children, but it's the kind of thing that puts you to thinking, right? So in regards to education, because Steven has a really good point. How do we engage consumers overall? Like, how do you
Well, it's not easy. When I was I think decades ago, I learned when I was running a different company that in the supermarket, the average consumer reads on average 7 words. So that doesn't give you a lot of opportunity to communicate with them on shelf or in the stores. But you do have a bit more time after that when they open a bar of chocolate. So, for example, on the inside of our wrappers, we communicate with them. We explain how the world looks like. We invest a lot of time in reaching out to consumers to really tell them the whole story. We have never done any form of advertising as Tony's because we just don't think that the 20 seconds of a television ad gives you enough time to really explain the story. So we invest a lot of time in building long-term relationships with consumers through social media, through documentaries, through exhibitions, through really taking the time to reaching out to them. So there's not too many companies that have the balls to have somebody like me who just travels the world to explain the story constantly. And then still it's difficult. But I think it also helps if you combine it with making a great tasting product. So you can make a very sustainable bar of chocolate that tastes like shit, and then you sell one and you will never sell another one again. And we really believe in making great tasting chocolate because then they will buy you again, and then you have another opportunity to explain the story. And then they buy a different bar, and then you have another opportunity to explain the story. So it's touch points with these consumers that you need to invest in. And also, I think for us, it helps that it's a very serious story, right? It's a very harsh story of modern slavery, but we try to make it as fun as possible for us during the whole process to do what we do. We show that we have a lot of fun. We play around a bit with jokes with the consumers. And at the same time, we can explain the serious story. So it becomes nicer if you're enjoying a bar of chocolate that you can also enjoy the brand. And then at the same time, be infused with knowledge so you become more aware about how the system works.
Perfect. I think, Stefan, your company, you have your own stores, right? Like in shopping malls. And you have only one store, which is the flagship store, isn't it? And you're present in the UK, Enzo, but the strategy is a bit different, correct?
Well, we have 2 stores, so 100% more than you thought. We have a store. That's a nice little anecdote. Our bars are sold in different places.
Right.
But to also keep our first customers happy, we have a bit of exclusivity left and right. So some customers have certain bars, other customers have other bars. But there's only 2 places in the whole galaxy where you can actually find all of our bars, and those are our stores. So we first launched a tiny store in our office where everybody was just working 1 day a month. Because we thought, that's fun. But the place was packed. So everybody came in, and people were disappointed because they would come in with their kids in the weekends and say, "Hey, your store is closed." And we said, "Yeah, it's our office. We're going in the weekends." So then we opened a slightly bigger store in our office. And then indeed, we opened the flagship store in the center of Amsterdam, which has an interesting historical background because our store is literally situated 2 stories down from the place where for hundreds of years, cocoa beans were traded. So it's in a very historic building, the first stock exchange in the world, actually, that building. So that gives it it gives it a historical background, for good or for bad, because the Dutch haven't always been as beautiful in history as we would love to think. Yeah.
We know that very well.
Yeah. You can hold.
My family came to Brazil in the Netherlands invasion, so I'm very happy that happened.
There you go. Don't blame me. So there's 2 stores, but also those stores are ways for us to get in touch with consumers, to get in touch with them, explain stuff to them. And that is also why we still are aiming to open our own factory as well in Amsterdam.
Perfect.
Our case, Carlos, we defined our own stores due to 2 main factors. One is the market position. Our main competitors, they have their stores. They are retailers too. Certainly, Google could say us here, he is the guy in retailing, that It's not easy being a retailer. We know the complex systems we have to face. 7 days store opens in malls, shopping malls. That is not an easy perspective. But in a global perspective, the other factor is that 45 or even half of the added value in the chain is with the retailer. That once we didn't want that our bars should be so expensive in the final price, once our cost of goods is higher than the competitors, we define, so we will need to be in this elo, in this position, to calibrate the final price to the competitors, with the competitors. And an additional question is that in Brazil, if you want to grow independently as a consumer goods brand, unfortunately, you need to be controlling your retailing or your market, your go-to-market system. It's a bad issue, but it's the reality. We don't have medium or big brands in Brazil that depends on the retailing. You certainly you would be in a fight of trading costs, enhancing trading costs, and you will never going out of this.
The big chocolate companies in Brazil, just to reinforce what Esteban said, don't have more than 5% dependence of the big chains, for example, supermarket big chains, because it's very spread. And to reinforce as well what he said, we used to say that God gave us retailers a double dose of optimism, so many no's that we listen during the life. So this is why we do that. There's a question here in the Q&A for, I think it's for Esteban, from Martin Sidiani. Why isn't more cacao produced in Brazil?
Brazil certainly has a huge opportunity of producing more cocoa. Just in case, in the last century, until the First World War, Brazil was the biggest global producer of cocoa. After 1989, when the witch broom disease in South Bahia eliminated around 95% of the producers. Since though Brazil has lost positions as a global player in the cocoa sector. In the last year, we were the number 7 in producing cocoa. This issue involves many details, but the main topics is not a feasible business. Is compared to other channels. The farmers, they have the option to choose other channels. Unfortunately, in Africa, many times, it's not a choice, it's the condition of producing cocoa. In Brazil, people have other channels, other cultures that may go do so, fruits, forest production, and not wood production. And then they may have, fortunately, they have the choice. That's the way we say that being in a better condition than Africa makes that some players do not want to produce. Compared, for example, with coffee. Coffee in Brazil, that is a good quality, a good exportation. We have a good exportation of coffee in Brazil. But comparing the prices, we are 60 or 50% less in terms of final price than coffee industry. Then it is a question of being a culture that is competitive or not competitive compared to other brands we have in the local agro-industry.
So we came back to the beginning of this discussion.
Exactly. If it's not competitive business, it's not a look. If you do not provide a profitable business, nobody.
And the question is this: why do the chain cannot generate more wealth to who produces the cocoa, and then or reduce the forward margin or increase the final price to the customer explaining that is that reason.
But and at the same time, a complication, Hugo, is that our economic system is based on margins.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
If you want to pay a premium to the beginning of the value chain of a couple of cents, those couple of cents become 30, 40 cents cost of goods through a value chain that doesn't need to make a margin on a premium to the farmer. Right, so it would be great if we had an economic system where a consumer could be able to pay 10 cents premium, which would go directly to the beginning of the value chain. But unfortunately, everybody thinks in margins, in relative margins. So I often tell people there's no percentages in your bank account, it's dollars in your bank account.
Yeah, unfortunately it is.
Yeah.
Gents, we have to wrap up. And the final question, which is your opinion on the future of the industry then, how you see it?
That kind of depends on what time of day and what time of week you would ask me, Carlos. So, because that's a general question of where this world is heading, honestly. And I think in a very short time frame, if you look at the bigger history, humanity has managed to almost make itself extinct. It won't take long. That would be my very depressing moment in the week. The optimistic moment would be that, honestly, if you look at the initiatives around us, if you look at the amount of amazing entrepreneurs, even in these times of the COVID pandemic, you see all the opportunities that are launched left and right. You see society starting to come together more in these times of hardship. That also gives me a lot of faith in the future. If I look at a future generation of entrepreneurs that are now in college and university, that take sustainability almost as a given and not as something to do as a bit of marketing or it stems me hopeful. So I often tell students, I do not know what the future holds, but I do know who holds it. So I do have a lot of faith there. But the future of the cocoa industry, I would say, needs to be a much more equally divided and fairly divided value chain. I won't start a new discussion, but we were talking about producing more cocoa. I don't particularly think we need to produce more cocoa. I think we need to pay a fairer price for cocoa and enable farmers to be able to produce more cocoa on their individual farm level, but not per se more cocoa farmers, right? Because they're already so poor. Future, hopefully, is consumers that understand that they have the power to change things. Entrepreneurs that understand that a purpose-driven economy, which in my opinion is only a sidestep towards a love economy or an empathy economy, is the only option we have in 21st century capitalism to get us out of the shit pile that we got us into in the couple of last generations.
We have elections coming up. We won't talk about it. So
no, but honestly, I don't think we need to wait for elections, Carlos.
I agree. No, I totally agree.
We need to realize that each and every purchase we make and each and every business decision we make is a vote for the world we want to live in right now.
That's it.
Perfect.
I totally agree with Enzo that we need a better shared value chain. It's not a question of quantity, it's a question of quality about our choice. What we say do not comprehend your only beautiful words, but I believe the future purpose in caring people. Our business will not exist without people. And cocoa farmers, they are central in such a discussion. We don't have chocolate without good cocoa farmers. We don't have high quality chocolate without high quality beans. People are the central question. As Hugo already told us or mentioned in the books he mentioned, healing companies, they require that we need to face in a no obvious perspective. I believe that Tony's, Django, they are good examples of a movement. We don't want to be huge companies alone. We want to have a new world, a new reality in the chain. and that we may engage with our provocation, our discussions, and evoking the globe to let's go together, let's promote in our small, middle-sized, or huge business such challenges that we are facing some decades.
Carlos, I want to thank you the great opportunity to be with Esteban again, to meet Enzo, a new friend, a new international, for good friend. And I will end with a phrase from the Professor John Shar that left us some time ago. The future is not some place we are going, but the one we are creating.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, all. I think now we have new friends. Oh, that's smart.
I'm flagrantly plugging the petition that we've launched to make sure that we create more change in the world. So if people want to join up as this movement, I mean, this, as I said before, this is not about Tony's. This is about us changing the world together as a global movement of partners for change. So if people want to join in to sign a petition to put pressure on governments and also become a serious friend of Tony's, I would love that. Thank you very much for the opportunity also, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch, yeah?
Thank you too.
All the best.
All the best. Take care. Stay healthy.
Thank
stay
you.
safe,
Bye.
people.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.